o'clock. I'm going to call this public hearing to order. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to receive public comment on the tax deferral for the elderly ordinance. I would like you, if you wish to comment, to come forward to the microphone so that all in the room can hear you, and it can be picked up on our tape, and state your name and residence address. I do have one written comment that I'd like to read into the record. It's from Robert Gallet, who was a member of the Board of Finance. It says, "Thank you for soliciting comments. I'm in Chicago, or else I would attend. My concerns revolve around three issues. One, I wish there were a more accurate way of modeling impact. I know we feel it will be limited, but I know that money will be tight, so I have some moderate concerns. Two, will this act as a formal lien? I just hope there are not probate issues with the estates. Also concerned that someone could do a reverse mortgage. Three, age and residency seem reasonable. I do wonder if the income limits are too high. I'm guessing we have a fair amount of townspeople at those levels, and it does prioritize seniors potentially over others with hardships. All in all, a good idea, though I think is a pilot." Rob Gallet. And he is a resident of Castle Rock Lane.
Sandy, I also have one from Pam Sawyer, who texted it to me this afternoon.
Can you read the text to us?
The text was very limited, but what it meant, what she wanted to recommend was a tie to the general inflation for the income limits, so that we wouldn't have to revisit this every year. And that's from Pam Sawyer, South Road.
Thank you.
I don't need a microphone.
Okay. Would you state your name and address?
This cannot be mandatory on anybody who decides not to.
No, it cannot. Could we have your name and address, though, please?
John Skransky, 15 Rocco Road, Bolton, Connecticut.
Thank you, John. It is not mandatory. It is definitely an optional program, and you would need to be eligible by meeting the residency and the income requirements. Thank you for that question.
Adam Feller, 23 Elizabeth Road. A few comments. First, I endorse most of what Rob Gallet said, but I have a few questions and suggestions about maybe making this a little more precise. Because first, I think using a set number for the gross income level and the way it's defined is quite vague in terms of what you've added and subtracted. I would prefer that you use a gross income level that's either tied to a multiple of the poverty level, the federal poverty level for this state, or a median or some other median income level, something like that, something that can be statistically derived on an annual basis. The second thing here is that I think that the 2% interest rate is a little unrealistic. I would like to see it tied either to the highest rate that the town is currently paying on an outstanding bond, or some other market rate, like the prime rate, even if it's prime rate below, reduced by some amount. I think it's a little unfair to people who aren't subject to the program to be giving that big a spread between what normally is paid on taxes, which is 18% a year, and 2%. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. John?
Is the 2% compounded yearly?
No, it's simple interest that will be accrued yearly.
Yearly. Thank you.
Sandy, excuse me, microphone, their comments are not gonna be on the tape or anything, so we really need people to step up and speak at the microphone.
Is that true, Ruth, that if they're not on the microphone, they're not on the tape?
Not with this camera.
Not with that one?
No,
Okay.
they should
Oh,
be
okay.
taped,
Thank you.
as long as I'm at the.
And I'm taking it that you're all out there to welcome me.
Pool Road, a couple things, I had that, again, maybe tighten it up a little bit. Just personally, I think that the income levels are a little bit high there, maybe even mirroring the, homeowners program, state limits would be an option. I think the 2% interest seems kinda low. My other comments are regarding, homeownership as far as who the primary owner is. What if the property is in a trust? Or what if the elderly homeowner has life use? Maybe you can address those in that so there won't be any questions later on. And there's a statement in there about the lien being filed. I think it needs to be a yearly lien. And it doesn't say who's filing that. I mean, we can assume it's a tax collector, but it probably should be stated. And, let's see, oh yes, the site itself, you're saying the residence, outbuildings, and acreage, is that how it was written? Lot.
The building lot.
Yeah, sometimes there's just odd things that come up. What if somebody has their house on large acreage that even could be in forest or something like that, or forest land or some type of other PA 490. Didn't know if there's be any way that could be tightened up even if there was a situation like that, maybe just the house, the outbuildings and everything that's on whatever the zoning requirement would be, maybe 2 acres or whatever it is. Okay, I think that's it for that, thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Anyone else?
Just one more thing. I'm sorry, I don't mean to Adam Teller again. If you're saying that the owner of the property is subject to the income test, what's the household income? Because you could be the owner and you could have somebody with $1 million in income and they're not signing the application. So I think you really have to tie this to household income, make the people sign an application or submit some kind of verification, and use either some multiple of a poverty level or some kind of mean or median income standard with a multiplier, obviously, or a percentage of it. Because otherwise you're gonna get people gaming the system pretty badly. And to Mary's point about what the lot is, I mean, routinely we assess large parcels that have a house on them. The house and a building lot size is assessed at one amount, and then maybe the extra acreage is assessed at $9,000 or $10,000 a year, which is already somewhat of a savings in the way that's handling. If you're gonna give this deferment to the entire parcel, say a 50-acre parcel with a house on it, I don't think that's reasonable at all. I think you should do it only to the house and whatever would be an allowable building lot, and then everything else gets no deferment.
Did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, just so that we're all clear as to what we're talking about, we're only talking about tax increases. We're not talking about the entire tax that's due. For example, I'll use myself for an example. I pay about $10,000, $11,000, something like that on my house. If the taxes went up $300 next year, I still owe the $10,000 or $11,000. It's only the $300 that's deferred. So it's not, it's not taking into consideration we're not deferring the person's whole tax. It's only increases, basically freezing their taxes at the level they are now. But, and the idea.
There's no rationale for deferring taxes on anything other than a principal residence.
Right,
is what I'm
and
saying.
well, I'm gonna bring up, Gwen brought up a good point when we were talking about that. And she was talking about somebody who might be land rich and property poor. You know, the farmer or the person that's lived here their whole lives and lived on the family farm, or the acreage that was left to them, so to speak. And while they may have a lot of wealth in their acreage, they have no money. to sustain the property and themselves. And that's the type of person that we're trying to protect or allow to stay in their home through this program. It's, you know, it's not for the person, well, like me, for example, who can, you know, handle my taxes, or at least I hope I can in the future. It's for somebody who's in a situation where they really would be forced to move from their home, and we have nothing else to give them. We have no senior housing, we have no prospects of senior housing or anything like that. And this was an attempt to be able to keep somebody in their residence for their life, to keep them in their home here. And like I said before, it's only the increase that we're looking at. It's not the entire tax bill. In my case, it would be about $300 this year that we would be deferring. And so it's not a ton of money that we're looking at. It's only, you know, trying to give them something to stay in their home.
I think you make, if I may, I think you make a valid point on the properties under the 490 program. The 490 program, in essence, had reduced, dramatically reduces your tax thing. Hadn't thought about that.
But when it's drastically reduced like that, the increase is gonna be next to nothing
It's like
anyway.
$5, $10.
You know, on that-
But
on that.
yeah, I mean, the dollar impact,
That may
I
be
think it's
so.
the idea more the dollar impact.
That may be so, but I'm just looking for
No, no.
rationale for somebody to
Yeah,
get a tax
no, I-
deferment on something that's not their principal residence.
I appreciate where you
That's
are.
where I'm
No,
going.
I understand that. I
You know,
just-
and that's why Gwen brought up the fact of somebody who would be land rich, but, you know, money poor, so to speak.
Which almost solidifies my thing about, I think if they're land rich and money poor, they're probably not having an income of 50,000 for single and 75,000 for married. That seems high. I mean, if that's the person, if you're trying to really give to people in need, because as soon as somebody gets a break, everybody else in town is paying for it. And yes, you recoup some of it, but you're not necessarily gonna recoup all. But, and I definitely think that, yes, it's needed, and there are certain people that we definitely wanna be able to help with this. But that just seems quite generous. So,
You know, though, that's what we're here to hear.
Yep.
You know.
Anyone else out there with a comment or a question?
Sorry, Ken, I didn't mean to quote you, I didn't see you sitting there.
All right, you did it accurately.
Thank you.
Okay, last call for comments or questions. This public hearing is closed. Thank you for coming. We'll have a 2-minute recess and we'll convene the Board of Selectmen's meeting for this evening. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we go to public comment, I'd like to recognize Edward Steele III, who his fourth, thank you, who is in scout uniform tonight, who is here working on his civics requirements for a Boy Scout badge. Welcome, Eddie. Okay, public comment. Barbara?
Hi, Barbara Modio, Volpe Road in Bolton. I'm here on behalf of Bike Walk Bolton, and we would like to welcome the new and the returning Board of Selectmen, and to let the new people know that the mission of Bike Walk Bolton is to advocate for the expansion of safe, practical, and accessible means for moving about our community for pedestrians, cyclists, and the handicapped. And we hope that you will use us as a resource, and where possible, please include us in any activities related to our mission. I have a whole report that I'll pass out to you with our accomplishments. I won't read it to you, but I do want to share with you that one of the initiatives we started was to place an infrared trail counter on the Hop River Trail. and we've been collecting data. We've logged in 80 hours as volunteers on the project. And the latest counter information, which I just got yesterday, shows 23,210 hits on the counter from December 20th, 2016 to October 23rd, 2017. So each hit represents a time that a person passes by the counter, and many of the trail users will do a return trip, so they would be counted twice. But there's also some undercounting because users pass by sometimes in groups and they're counted just as one person. So one of our jobs was to go down and actually manually count the people that were going by, and that data will be factored into future numbers. There are a lot more programs. As I said, I have these to give to you and some for people in the audience who might want to know some of the many things we've done. I also want you to know that Bike Walk Bolton fully supports the DOT proposals for 6 and 44, and will add our strong voice of support tomorrow night at the DOT meeting here, 7 o'clock. And then just on a personal note, not Bike Walk Bolton, I just wanted to say that I'm really sickened and I'm embarrassed by the political maneuvering that took place for the Board of Selectmen elections and the total disregard for the voices of the people of Bolton. I'm ashamed and sorry that we went that route. Thank you.
Thank you. Red?
My name's Ray Hardy, and I live on Brandy Street in Bolton. And I'm thinking, or at least hoping, that the majority of folks in town are aware of the statewide Connecticut DEP Connecticut Bobcat project. And that will probably be extended for, it's going to be very comprehensive. Where the state is asking for quite a bit of public participation, getting involved in this and help. Partially, the project is to kind of get a fix on population densities in Connecticut. Right now, it's kind of a unknown. People are seeing bobcats, and the state says, well, now we're seeing a lot more. So what does that mean? Where are the population centers? Where are the higher populations of bobcats? We're seeing a lot more on this side of the river, the eastern part of the river. And some of that work is going to be population densities and movement patterns. Population densities and movement patterns will require the use of GPS collars. And the DEP, I've worked with the DEP on research projects and educational projects for some years, and they asked me to participate with them locally to give them a hand with this project. And what my capacity would be for that would be to monitor live traps in town. We've been given permission to use certain land trust properties, and we did catch one kitten, 10-pound kitten. She was too small to be collared, so she's really not going to figure very largely in the research. We're hoping, we know her mom's out there, so we're hoping we'll be able to capture the mom and put a collar on her. These collars, for people that are concerned about collars on wildlife, the kittens, that's obvious. Their necks are too small, they're going to grow fast, so that might be a concern. But the adults, once they get over 15 pounds, and bobcats can be up to 35 pounds. We did catch one in downstate, 35 pounds. We did had about that big. Those collars are programmed to be released, I think it's August 1st of next year. So they will automatically be released remotely on their own. And they set off a radio signal so that we can find the collars and recycle them for next year. The target this year is to collar 50 bobcats statewide. So Connecticut, in Bolton anyway, we've got one, so we're on the map. And we're trying to target, what I'm trying to do right now is trying to coordinate, where are the sightings occurring? Is there a kind of a central area? And it seems to be Warner Swamp. And what I'd like to ask the Board of Selectmen to consider is whether or not we might have permission to use, there's state land that is in Warner Swamp on the north end, west of Hebron Road and south of School Road. That,
State land or town land?
What's that?
You said
a town,
state, but.
right, town
Okay,
land, I'm sorry.
okay.
Yeah, so that town land, we have permission, Land Trust graciously gave us permission to use the sections below that. There's a smaller section about midway, and there's a larger section a little bit farther down on Hebron Road. That's where we caught the kitten. And so I'd like to ask permission to use that property. What I would do is coordinate with the biologists and locate a trap somewhere in that northern section. They like thick, brushy stuff that people don't like to walk through. And I would monitor the trap once or twice a day. And non-target species, we've caught a couple fishers. Those are released. Raccoons, well, they're pretty much settled down for the winter, but any non-target species are released. Bobcats, then I put a call into the DEP, and the biologists come out, and then we go through the whole process. The cats, obviously, they have to be sedated. And then they measured, weighed, and if they're appropriate size, if they're adults, then the collars are placed on them and ear tags are placed in them. Also take DNA samples. There's a plug from the ear where the ear tag will go, and that's filed. Whisker clipping is filed, so we have a DNA record of that particular cat. And then the collar, once that's placed on, GPS sends a signal to the satellite every 4 hours. So the nice thing about using GPS collars, you can sit in the warmth of your home and open up the laptop and you see where that cat's moving. And that, I mean, this is a really kind of a, I'm pretty, obviously, you can tell by my way I'm talking, I'm pretty excited about this because I've been waiting for this project to get up and rolling for about 3 or 4 years. So now we're underway. 50 cats this year, collared hopefully 50 next year. I think we're ahead of schedule at this point. I think what they're gonna find out is a lot more bobcats in Connecticut than anybody imagined. So that parcel, I'd like that to be considered as a possible trap site. The other parcel, as a backup, also I'd like to have considered would be that new section, the Route 6 section. That also has had evidence of and sightings of bobcats in that area. It has a wetland on the lower section of it, closer to Bolton Collision. Has a wetlands in there with a lot of thick brambles, ideal habitat for bobcats, not for me, but for them. And it's easy access. One of the things I'm looking for as far as criteria is, I'm not as young as I used to be, so I need to be able to get in every day, whether we got 3 foot of snow on the ground or not. Plus, it should not be heavily traveled by people or motorcycles or quads or other vehicular traffic. So anyway, thank you for your time. I'd like to have you consider possibly us being able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Paula?
Paula Myers, 57 Country Club. I first want to congratulate all of you on the election, and I'm hoping that you guys will work collegially and collaboratively in the years to come, at least the next 2 years, so that for the betterment of Bolton. I'd like to preface this by saying I've lived in town for 18 years, and in that time I've been a registered Republican. I've been mostly unaffiliated, and I have been a registered Democrat. I was elected to the Board of Ed as a Democrat, but I was never a registered Democrat during the time unless I was voting in a primary election. I read yesterday that Liz Kruger has resigned from the Board of Selectmen, and this board is now going to have to fill her vacancy in the near future. As a citizen, taxpayer, and voter of this town, I'm here to voice my extreme displeasure at this turn of events. As you know, if you're on Facebook, both Liz, as well as the Republican Town Committee, were asked point blank what the plan was if Liz did not win as first selectman, but was voted as a selectman. Many people reiterated the question prior to the election. Neither Liz nor the party would provide an answer as to what she would do if this exact scenario played out. I even asked in person what the different factors would be that would weigh into one decision versus another, and she wouldn't tell me. If Liz did not intend to fulfill her commitment, she had the opportunity to resign as early as the night of the election when she did not win the first selectman role. This could have saved the town the cost, time, and effort of the recount. It also could have saved the town the time and effort of the coin flip. Liz had the opportunity to resign also before being sworn in, again, preventing us from having to be in this position. I understand that sometimes parties need to run a placeholder. In those instances, my experience has been that people stand up and admit their intention to not fill the term and just say, I'm just a placeholder for this. I'm hopeful that Liz was not merely running as a placeholder for this major board and didn't admit to it. My question to the Republicans on this board, and I ask you to take this back to your Republican Town Committee, is this. If Liz Kruger never had any intention of serving on the board on which she asked to lead, why did you let her run? I'm really at a loss here, because the only conclusion that I can reach based on the timeline of events is that at the very least, there's the appearance of a purposeful and thought-out plan to circumvent the democratic voting process and not allow the citizens of this town the opportunity to elect their selectmen. I get that your party didn't like the results of the first selectman vote. Trust me, I'm very familiar with the feeling of what happens when an election does not go the way you wanted. But your party not getting what you wanted did not give Liz or the Republicans the right to hedge your bets, resulting in voters losing the right to choose their representative. Let me be clear, I do not know Liz, I have nothing against her personally, but I do have strong opinions on her actions and the impact of those actions on this town. It is contemptuous to the democratic process to game the system this way. Mike, I don't know you either, but you seem like a fine man. Bobby, I've known you for several years. I respect the work that you've done for this town, and I have great affection for you. But if either of you were complicit in supporting someone in an election to this board that she had no intention on sitting on, then I say respectfully, shame on you. And I will say the same to anyone else who had a hand on it. It was disrespectful to the voters of this town. It was disrespectful to the other people on this board, and it was disrespectful to the town employees that work for us. There's no place for this level of dirty politics, especially at the town level. Don't we have enough of this at the federal and the state level by both parties? Everything about this has the appearance that the Bolton Republicans put winning and power above the democratic process. If I'm wrong, I'll buy you both a drink and you can explain to me what I'm thinking wrong.
You don't have to buy me a drink, but you're totally wrong.
Okay, well then that's fine. I've asked the question.
And I'm very willing to respond.
That would be great.
Oh, you're not done yet?
I'm not done. And let me be clear, if the Democrats had done this, I would still be standing here and saying the exact same thing to them. I don't pretend to understand what the process is at this time, but I'm here to ask you this. When it comes time to fill the vacancy, I ask that you avoid the cost of a special election to show a sign of bipartisanship and put the town before party. I ask, if possible, that you appoint someone for whom the voters got to have a say. In this particular case, because Kim and Mike tied, and their votes were just 3 votes shy of Liz's, I believe we can feel comfortable that the voters were, statistically at least, equally acceptable of any of the 3 of them serving. I do not know Kim any more than I know Liz or I know Mike. But I'm also not saying this because she's a Democrat. I would be here asking you to put Mike on the board if Kim had won the toss. I say this only because I believe strongly in the rights of the voters to elect their representatives and not in party shenanigans. During the election, I did not hear any objections with respect to Kim's ability to fulfill the duties of the selectmen. But obviously, if you have reservations and strong objections unrelated to party affiliation, I hope you do voice them. But barring that, your party created this mess, and I ask that you rise up and fix it. If you feel like you cannot possibly put town before party, then I ask that you at least have a special election so the voters can have a say on who will represent them for the next 2 years. If you insist on putting us through the cost of an election, remember that this is a mark that will forever be attached to the Republicans in this town if you don't do something now to earn back our respect. All of you represent all the people in this town, not just your parties. Please respect what the voters of this town told you on November 7th and save us the cost of what should have been an unnecessary special election.
Well presented.
Anyone else wish to comment during the public comment section of our meeting? Jim?
Different topic though.
You're perfectly welcome to do that.
Jim Aldrich, 35 Hanover Farms Road. I'm here to talk about two things. Briefly, I want to thank all of you for running for re-election, and as a person not really involved in the political process right now, I just thought it was awesome how you had a tie vote and it got solved by a coin toss. I found out about it by watching the evening news, and both parties had to agree to it, and I've never seen 3 coins flipped at one time. I heard there was some suspense where one of the coins went too, but, so thank you for that. I used to be involved in the political process. In the first third of my career, I built homes in Bolton. I built 2 subdivisions. And then for 17 years, I stopped all construction activity in town because I was elected official or in community service. But I'm out of that process now, and I'm back to building things in town. I have a building permit for my first job, and I heard through the grapevine that the fire marshal has retired. He's done an outstanding job for the town. I know him personally, heck of a guy. And going through a building permit, I've been 16 months to get this permit through planning and zoning and everything. All good people. I'm not here to criticize anybody. And there's 11 different agencies we have to go through to get a building permit: planning and zoning, wetlands, building official. But with Ray retiring, I know Cheryl's here. She's the chairman of the fire commission. She's another person doing a great job. I heard there's consideration to make the current building official, Jim Rupert, who does a good job, combination fire marshal and building official. And the fire marshal has a bigger job than just the construction activities, but I'm here to voice my support for consolidating that into one job for most of the construction activity in town. For people like myself who are planning on being users of the system, it's a lot easier for us to deal with one official. And these are smart people. They know the building code, they know the fire code, and it prevents a lot of conflicts. Several years ago, one of my customers had a building collapse. There was a structural failure, and I had to go up to Vermont to address the issue and come up with some repairs. And up in Vermont, it's the fire marshal's department that also does the building inspections. So it's been combined into one position. And for users like myself, that type of streamlining, and in terms of getting people out to inspect the job, instead of trying to get 2 people out, to get 1 person out. And if you have questions, and the codes overlap, so there's tremendous benefits for us users and lines of communication. So I know you're going to give us an experiment from what I hear, or consider it. I'm hoping you'll support it, and I think it's a benefit for the town and for people like myself who are users of the system.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else wish to comment?
Briefly, Adam Teller, Elizabeth Road. First of all, to Mr. Aldrich's point, I sort of endorse the idea that one-stop shopping is a good thing. I feel a little sorry if Jim Rupert has to add one more hot hat to the many hats he already wears. So I think he's also the emergency services or even
emergency
management person and the zoning enforcement official. But if it's efficient and it makes the system more user-friendly, I think that's something Mr. Aldrich and I agree on. I do want to comment on the vacancy on this board and ask you to take one of 2 steps to resolve it. The fact is that in the most recent election, 4 people were within 2 votes of each other. One of them, who's sitting on the board now, has had an equal number of votes as the person who did not win the coin flip, who does happen to be Kim Miller, who was endorsed as a Democrat. I think the appropriate thing under that unusual situation is for you to fill the vacancy with Ms. Miller. First of all, because I know personally that she'd be a fantastic contributor and members of this board, but also because you really shouldn't allow chance to affect how the outcome was. And the reality is that if the individual who did run had simply made her decision 2 or 3 weeks sooner, that would have been the outcome of the actual election. The people who stood up and were tested by the voters and had to go out there and talk to the voters and received votes, I think ought to be given first consideration in this rather unusual situation. It's not as if there was a 100-vote difference. The second thing is that if you choose not to do that, I think it would be unfortunate, to say the least, if this board couldn't reach a consensus that was at least 3 or 4 of you agreeing on one candidate that they felt that you could all work with in a bipartisan and a way that was best for the town. If you can't settle on somebody that you can all, or at least 3 of you can agree, so the person has support on both sides of the table, I think it would be extremely unfortunate if a small group of Republican elected officials chose the next select person and therefore the control of this board. I think that would be an insult to the voters. I think that would be an insult to the electoral process. And you have a choice. You can instead, under a separate statute, call a special election yourselves and not put it to those people and to that small group, which does happen to include the 2 Republican selectmen sitting here. I think that would be the appropriate way to give the voters back that choice. A special election is not that unusual thing. We'd be able to get people nominated and have an election for that one post without creating the hard feelings that I think would probably be created, maybe already have been created by this situation. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, I'd like to move on to our agenda. First item is item 3A, approval of the minutes of November 13th, 2017, special 3-board meeting. Go ahead.
I'll move the approval.
Okay. Any other additions or second.
Second. I'll second.
Any additions or corrections? I haven't found any. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of our November 14, 2017 Selectmen's meeting.
No.
Go ahead.
I'll move approval.
Second.
All right, any additions or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So are you abstaining?
No, I'm aye.
You're aye, okay, thank you. And November 27th, the special 3-board meeting held at the high school.
Move to accept.
It's been moved, is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any additions or corrections to that meeting? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Nicole abstains. Thank you. Correspondence. I believe we have 2 items of correspondence. The first is a email from a lieutenant. Is it in here?
John Walczek from
Thank you.
the Wareham Police Department.
There he is. Hello, my name is John Walczek, and I'm a lieutenant in the Wareham, Massachusetts Police Department. On Wednesday, November 29th, I had the occasion to be in your beautiful community. I was with a friend of mine who was a fire captain, and we stopped by your firehouse and were greeted by the night custodian, who was a perfect gentleman. The custodian contacted the fire chief so we could check out the fire station and apparatus. Fire Chief Dixon came by and proved to be a wonderful ambassador for your town and its fire department. Chief Dixon was extremely friendly and took time out of his day to show us the department and its workings. He spoke with pride about Bolton and the fire department. Both my friend and I were very impressed with his knowledge, professionalism, and devotion to duty. It appeared that the Bolton Volunteer Fire Department is a well-run agency that plays a vital role in the safety of our town. Our visit was cut short by the chief leaving on an emergency call. However, we left commenting that the town was very lucky to have such a fine man running its fire department. Again, I wanted to let you know that what a positive experience it was visiting your town and the fire department. And we've shared this with the Fire Commission and Chief Dixon. It's very heartening to receive that kind of comments from somebody who's a stranger to our town. And then our second piece of correspondence was dated December 4th, 2017. To whom it may concern, please consider this letter my resignation from my position on the Board of Selectmen effective immediately. Sincerely, Elizabeth S. Kruger.
And this,
And we also received some correspondence tonight addressed to Joyce Stilley, Town Administrator, Board of Selectmen. The Republican Vacancy Nominating Committee have nominated Susan Pike for replacement of the seat vacated by elected Republican Elizabeth Kruger on the Board of Selectmen, and it's signed by Rodney Fournier, Bolton Republican Town Committee Chairman. Okay, I don't think we have any unfinished business. No. Okay. Moving on to new business. I just want to remind everybody, and especially those in the audience or who may be watching this tape, that tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock here, the DOT, those people, the road people, will be holding a public hearing here on the Charter Oak Greenway and the use path extension and the Notch Road realignment. Again, that's here at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. Public comment is welcome.
if I may, also, the maps are on the town's website. If you want to look at what's going to be discussed, they're also posted behind you. If you want to take a look before you leave tonight, it's a little bit bigger version
in the
than
aisle on
trying to
this side.
see it on your computer.
Yeah, it's almost difficult to read on the computer, but it's nice, easy to see there. Lower Bolton Lake status report. Kim Welsh, I saw you.
Yes, I have one update. Last month, I reported that Wesleyan Professor Koo and their students would be here on the 30th of November, reporting on the core sediments they took this summer at Middle and Lower Bolton Lakes. That meeting has been changed. It's going to be this Thursday, the 7th, at 7 p.m. at New Hawka, which is on Middle Lake. Again, that's Wesleyan's Professor Koo and their students doing a project on the core sediment sampling. They'll be presenting their results and their research. That's all I have. Anybody have any questions?
Do you have anything to add, Joe?
No? No. The drawdown continues.
Yes.
But unfortunately, as we get rain, it fills it up
Yes.
as quickly as it's coming out.
Thank you.
Okay. FY18 budget, we have a status report in the packet.
First,
And Mike, that's the period ending
Yep.
June 30th, 2018.
for current year expenditures, the town is at 37.76% expensed at this point, compared to last year at the same time, 36.29%. To the year before, 35.40, and FY15, 37.15% expense. So we're pretty much right in the same line. Since the last meeting, the governor did further put out a reduction to the town of Bolton of $241,457 in ECS funding. The state has exceeded their legal, where they can be in a deficit, that they're coming back into a special session, whether or not they'll address that at this point this week or come back again for a different special session, but they have to come up with a deficit management plan. So there could be further reductions to municipalities. That's the good and the bad news on that.
Good. What
Yes.
was the total, the amount, the latest amount, again?
241,457.
Oh, 2.4. Do you have a date on that? That was announced?
It was the day right after the Board of Finance meeting,
Okay.
Yeah, that Friday.
because at the Board of Finance meeting, they were talking about how our reductions were not as deep as had been anticipated. And then the very next day, the state
Okay.
came back with further. Also in your packet is the tax collector summary through the end of October, showing that we, for current year real estate and personal property, we are 99.79% collected. And just remember that 99.79% is of the 98% we budget. We never budget 100%. We budget 98%, and we've collected 99.79% of that 98%. Compared to last year, we were actually already over at 100.48%. The one thing that is not an apples to apples comparison is last year included the motor vehicle. And this year, the motor vehicle bills did not go out until the state had set the cap on the motor vehicles. So those bills are currently out, and people have until the end of December to make those payments without any interest.
Thanks, Joyce. Any other questions on the budget report?
Nope.
Okay. Next item is to consider an act on the tax deferral program for the elderly ordinance. Since I closed the public hearing, we have 14 days in which to take action.
There were some interesting comments made that we may have wanted to consider.
Quick question on that. If we don't act tonight, do we have to hold another public hearing?
No,
If
we
we wait,
we have to hold another meeting.
all right, so we'll just hold another meeting to act on.
And
Okay.
if we do a major modification.
If it's a major
We
modification.
would then hold another one. Quite
And I
frankly,
would say a major modification would consider a change to the interest rate, a change to the income levels, or
Residency,
residency,
how you look at gross income.
how you
any
look
of the
at gross
comments.
income or what the property is. And it appears that those are the items that people wanted us to reconsider.
yeah, my,
You know, I've heard as much, because I was involved in this, I've gotten some feedback from people, and I've heard as much comments the other way. So I'd like some time now to think about it, to be perfectly honest with you. You know, it's a fairly important thing, and I'd like to do it once and do it right. So I have no problem holding another meeting to discuss this.
and bring it, and if I may, and suggest that we do hold another, either however you wanna do it, go over these things and so it doesn't hold up things too much. Anyone's thought that you think we can do this prior to our January meeting and bring forward? Or would that be really pushing it?
How about December 19th? Are you going?
I'm gone, but I think next Friday is
I can be available.
Okay. Let's schedule a meeting for December 19th, 7 PM. Location to be determined, but hopefully here.
December. What day of the week is that?
Monday?
Tuesday,
It's a Tuesday night.
Tuesday evening, December 19th.
You want that as a motion?
Sure.
Seconded?
Also move it.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we hold a special meeting on December 19th for the purpose of acting on the tax deferral program for the elderly ordinance. And all of you in the audience who are interested in that particular ordinance are welcome to attend. Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I'll get this down somewhere. Consider an act on a budget referendum. The Board of Finance schedules their hearings, etc., based on the day that the Board of Selectmen sets for the budget referendum. And I know it feels like May 2018 is a long, long way away, but we do have to set that date.
And in looking at the calendar, and Sandy and I discussed this, we would recommend that the budget referendum be held on May 22nd at the town hall from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's the week before Memorial Day, so then it would give 2 weeks before, if a second referendum was necessary, it would allow that to be June 5th. If a third referendum was necessary, it could be June 12th.
I'll make it a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the budget referendum be set for May 22nd, 2018 at Town Hall from 6 a.m. till 8 p.m. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The budget referendum has been set for May 22nd at Town Hall. And Joyce, will you notify?
Yes.
Board of Finance, thank you.
Board of Finance and registrars and town clerk.
Someday I'll get that right too. F, consider an act on a deputy first selectman.
Now, Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Sorry, I don't know what we're gonna use for terminology, but whoever.
You can just call me Sandy.
Sandy, thank you. I would move that we defer action on that till such time as we have a full board seated.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we defer the action on the deputy first selectman until such point as we have a 5-member board. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Moving on, fiscal 19 budget. Joyce? And Mike, this is the year ended
I know.
June
I'm
20th.
getting it. It's kind of a joke.
It's inside.
When you look at the budgets, they all say 18 rather than 17, 18, and I've been giving him a hard time since I started on this to put 17, 18, or 16, 17 kind of thing. So, and Sandy informed me the other day that through
Accounting terminology.
accounting terminology, that would be 2 years. So I'm giving in on this to be 18 kind of thing.
So I'm politely reminding him, it's
Yeah.
one of our, I love you, here it is.
Yeah, it's one of our little pet things going on.
So for the fiscal year 19 budget, obviously, people are starting now, the Council of Small Towns, CROG, CCM, to start to form our legislative platforms. Within the town, basically the message that went out to the department boards and commissions was based on the state. Basically, a flat budget is expected except for payroll increases back. Capital requests were due to me as of today, and it will be the Finance and Administration Subcommittee that looks at those, and then that moves on to the capital group, which is to complete its work by the end of January. So that is an ongoing item. You'll see the capital just information come back to you at your January meeting.
Any questions, comments on that information? I'm looking forward to seeing those capital requests. Item H, our last item under new business. Consider an act on budget transfers or appropriation requests.
We do not have any for tonight, but you will have one next month again for unemployment. We do not have enough funding to carry us any further. You just acted on it at your last meeting, but we've already depleted those funds again.
Any other good news?
What can I say?
Pay your car tax.
Yeah, pay your car tax, what, no money. That's it.
Exactly. Well, so we have more money to transfer in. Ongoing business. First item is subcommittee reports. You have in your packet a report from the Human Resources Subcommittee containing the proposed wage levels for next fiscal year.
And these are for non-union personnel.
These are non-union personnel, that's correct. Included in this are also Board of Selectmen. However, the subcommittee recommends that the Board of Selectmen wages not be automatically set at this level. For full-time union, non-unions, for full-time non-union staff, increases will be up to 2.5% for supervisors and 3% for non-supervisors based on their individual performance reviews, and any increase for the Board of Selectmen, which is 5 of us, needs to be approved by the end of the fiscal year or at the beginning of the fiscal year, and the salary for the administrative officer will be set as part of her annual review. So I'll entertain a motion to approve this.
I'll do it. A second.
You want to second it? Might as well give it a
I'm
shot.
quiet down here in my little
You don't want a second something
Sure, I'll
to get in
second
the
it.
minute?
I'll second it.
All right, it's been
I'm
moved
moving on
and,
the edge.
it's been moved and
Get your
seconded,
feedback.
that we approve the wages as proposed by the Human Resources Subcommittee. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. Properties and facilities, I just wanted to give some kudos to the Heritage Farm Commission that we entered a tree in the Bolton Congregational Church Festival of Trees. We have some very talented people on the Heritage Farm Commission, and they designed and decorated a beautiful tree that won us second place. That also comes with an award of $200, which will be deposited in the Heritage Farm Fund. So thank you to all of them for participating. And a shout out to the Bolton Congregational Church for starting a beautiful new Bolton tradition, and I'm looking forward to having that continue, and would urge any nonprofit who has not participated to think about developing a theme tree for next year, because it was a fabulous event and a great community gathering.
So who's the winner?
I'm sorry?
Who's the winner?
The winner was Bolton Music Works, was both the favorite charity and the favorite tree, and they performed that evening. Second place favorite charity was Bolton Land Trust. Third place tree was Girl Scouts of Connecticut, and third place favorite charity was Girl Scouts of Connecticut. And then there were 3 honorable mentions who are escaping me.
That's okay, that's doing pretty good.
Yeah, well, it's only because I happen to be fond of the second place winner.
Oh.
I figured out who were the others.
If I may, also, under properties and facilities, we continue to work with the auditor on the Bolton High School audit. They've noted a few things that will not qualify, pre-referendum items do not qualify for funding. They've also made us aware that for technology, we had paid for licenses and maintenance agreements to kick off the technology, and those will not be eligible for reimbursement either. But they're continuing their work. They said it could be May to June before they finish. She has 5 other audits she is concurrently working on. The other item is, and this will be posted and put in a Bolton bulletin going out. The transfer station normally is closed over the winter months, but last year, for the first time, we're gonna do it again this year. We're gonna be open on January 6th with an inclement weather date of January 13th. We have found that right after Christmas, people have lots of things they're looking to dispose of. So we're gonna be open from 8 to 12 that one Saturday morning.
Thank you. Moving on to, I don't think there's anything else under property and facilities. Moving on to revenue sources. We received today the name of an individual at the Connecticut Department of Housing who has been assigned as a facilitator for those homeowners who have crumbling foundations. So that is available by calling the town hall or emailing me, and my email address is on the town website, and we'll make sure that you get that information sent to you if you are a crumbling foundation homeowner or have a partial crumbling foundation. The IRS also, working with our state senators and Joe Courtney, has approved a casualty loss deduction for those who, on your income tax, for those of you who may be in that situation. I suggest you contact your personal tax advisor. However, because the Trump tax plan, if it passes the House and the Senate, will adversely affect a casualty loss deduction in total. So, good news, bad news.
And if I may, there's going to be 2 sources of funding for testing for the crumbling foundations. One is actually state monies that have been set aside that the Capital Region Council of Governments is responsible for overseeing. There's information on their website as to how much that will cover. We have also, if you looked at past minutes, the Board of Selectmen approved a joint application for Small Cities Development Block Grant, and we're still awaiting those funds to be awarded, but that is with 7 towns, and that one is income-based, however. So there will be 2 different programs, and hopefully within the next week or 2, we'll be able to put up information that'll show you the 2 programs and how they differ, so that if you are affected, you can choose which would be to your advantage.
Thanks, Joyce. Let's see, I think that's it. Moving on, subcommittee appointments. We have 3 subcommittees: Facility and Public Safety, Human Resources, and Finance and Administration. I'm going to ask Nicole and Mike to serve with me on Facilities and Public Safety. Nicole and Bob to serve with me on Human Resources, and Mike and a vacancy to serve with me on Finance and Administration.
Thank you.
each of those boards has a lot of work ahead of them, so. Again, that's Nicole and Mike on facilities and public safety, Nicole and Bob on human resources, Mike and I, and our vacant person, to be named player, on finance and administration. I'd like to defer Kappa appointments until our next meeting, so that we have, that would be myself and a deputy first selectman. And my intent is to continue with 3 board meetings in lieu of what used to be called the 2+2+2. So we'll all be invited to attend, and don't feel obligated that every meeting needs your attendance. But I think at the last meeting, we got some good energy in the room and some good ideas moving forward. And I think in a meeting or two, we'll be breaking into some smaller subcommittees to get some work done in between those large meetings. Joyce and I and 6 staff members attended the Connecticut Council of Municipalities Conference last week at Foxwoods. Joyce and I were there for 2 days. The supervisors came in for the workshop day. Joyce and I participated in workshops on shared services and barriers to shared services, and actually worked with a group to define targets for shared services and identify barriers. So I think it was very helpful there. And second day, I focused on economic development and went to 3 different presentations on economic development. So I'll be sharing some information with you on that in the future. Special town meeting is next week, December 11th, for approval of the teacher's contract, and information on that contract is out on our website. Did I forget anything, Joyce?
No, 7 p.m. here at Town
7
Hall.
p.m., thank you. Okay. Joyce, administrators report.
I just have 2 quick items. The Nathan Hill Greenway, just wanted to give you an update. That is actually the former Route 6 land that we, with the town of Coventry, had applied for a grant, and BSC Group has come in and done work to look at the proposed trail that could be created through that. They expect to be ready to have a public informational session on that in mid to late January. We're trying to coordinate with the town of Coventry so that we can have 1 presentation here in Bolton and 1 presentation in Coventry, and that residents could go to either presentation. They'll mirror each other. We're also working with them to delineate the boundaries of that land. The second item is the joint economic development with the town of Coventry. This is actually, we had contributed money with Coventry. We've talked about this in the past for economic development along the Route 44 corridor. They have talked about extending the sewer into part of that. We've talked about what are we looking for. And the thought behind this is much like with Route 6 originally, both towns, if there is any infrastructure investment or investment by the towns, both towns would contribute to that, but then the tax revenue would be shared on the other side. We have some conceptual plans. There's nothing in stone. So I will be here. I was going to be out there, but this is the parcel. This is Talent Road here. This is Route 44. This is a long parcel that goes back in. One of the things that we're talking about is some type of a wedding venue with parking need to delineate whether or not the wetlands, what can go back in there, or garden, some type of a dining or other item. On the other side, for the same parcel, we've actually had people come to us looking to potentially put in some fields, especially soccer fields, as options. So that goes into the fields, development of fields for that parcel in Bolton. The other larger parcels in Bolton involve the farm stand. It keeps some of the buildings, but puts in some potential uses, such as a farmer's market, shared parking, reuse the building, but again, some type of a venue. It could be professional, could be an eatery, trying to align the drives on the two sides, some type of mixed-use buildings. And the other parcel is that small triangular parcel at the town line, and a cafe or retail that it would fit in that little location very easily. In the town of Coventry, they have two larger parcels. We're very much looking at, can we possibly get some type of a Y facility or something similar to that for our two communities to share, because there's nothing relatively close. And then trying to reuse what is the auction house, reuse that area as well into some commercial and mixed use development. So stay tuned. These are being shared with the economic development commissions of both towns. And as we move forward with the two towns in, how can we sell this now to possible developers?
And the town manager of the town of Coventry is identifying the types of potential developers and also some leaders in those fields to approach with the ideas, so. Thank you, Joyce.
Interesting, because the two parcels on the Bolton side just transferred
Yeah.
a short while ago, and those are the two that are the most viable for our town. So that's good. Hopefully we'll progress positively and build our tax base.
It's not on the agenda, but I'd like us to consider Ray Hardy's request for trapping of bobcats at the two locations he mentioned. Warner Swamp, town-owned property on Warner Swamp, and the Route 6 section down near Bolton Collision.
I'll make a motion that we allow that.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Ray, for bringing that to our attention, and good luck.
Can you
Please
just-
don't let them loose on Brandy Street. I know they're
Can
there.
you just let my office know when the traps go out?
Oh, I will, yeah.
And in the end, when you pull them, so
Yeah.
if we get any phone
Yeah,
calls,
and I'll
we
let you
can.
know if we catch a bobcat.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Right, if I may, I have a question. What is the ultimate goal here for the state, other than tagging them?
There's well.
In 25 words or less.
Yeah, bobcats are essentially a new phenomenon in Connecticut. And so the state really doesn't know that much about how they respond to our particular situation. We've got quite a mix between, urban and all of that. We're gonna try to get a sense of, what's the density, how many do we have in the state, more or less? What are their movement patterns in these different situations? Other things too, what their diet is, variety of things. It's very comprehensive, but yeah.
And they've been here for over 30 years.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. you get your answer?
I did,
Great.
thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
no, not a problem. I'm glad you asked the question. We are now down to appointments. Cheryl, do you want to share with us what the fire department recommends with regard to the fire marshal?
Do I have to stand up there? Cheryl Uden, I live on McKinney Drive. I'm also the chair of the Fire Commission here in town, and the Fire Commission recommends that Jim Rupert become the interim fire marshal for the town until the end of this fiscal year, and then we'll take it up from there.
Okay.
And Jim is actually deputy fire marshal
Correct.
now, one of 2 deputies.
Correct. Correct. And he also said he would do it, so.
That's always key. Thank you.
Do we have,
We have to approve.
We have to approve this.
We'll move it.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we appoint Jim Rupert of Ashford as the interim fire marshal for Bolton for the period, you've asked it to extend till July 1. Would
Yes.
you agree to June 30th?
Yes.
Until June 30th, 2018. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. Jim Rupert is our new fire marshal, and we are looking forward to some regularly scheduled fire marshal visits to some of our commercial establishments and multifamily housing, and also to be available in case of a fire emergency. So we will be there. With the resignation of Liz Kruger, I asked Joyce to reach out to the town attorney and the Secretary of State's office because I had some differences of opinion on how the selection of the replacement for Liz would be appointed, elected, etc. The underlying state statute, as referenced in our charter, is Connecticut. Our charter mentions a vacancy on the Board of Selectmen to be filled according with state charter. And the relevant section of the state charter is section 9-222, which we've just shared with all members of the Board of Selectmen. Joyce, can you summarize your discussions today with both the town attorney and the Secretary of State's office?
Yes. And with this, there was absolutely no disagreement that that's what our charter references is 9-222, and so that is the means that is to be followed. It first puts it in the hands of the Board of Selectmen for 30 days to act on a replacement. If that does not occur, then it goes back to, in our case, the 2 Republican selectmen to appoint somebody if the full board cannot agree. That happens within 60 days. There's a notice from the town clerk if it's not filled within that first 30 days to the 2 Republican Board of Selectmen members. There is also if it reaches that point, there can also be a petition for a special election, and that requires 5% of the voters to sign a petition for a special election. The special election could be as many names as are put forward to run for that position. It could be a Republican, could be a Democrat, could be an unaffiliated. That does not make a difference. The special election goes back to other statutes as to how that would be run, but it would happen relatively quickly. So it's 5% of the names on the last completed registry list, but not fewer than 50, which ours would be the 5%. So there's a 30-day time frame, a 60-day time frame, then that kicks into the possible special election, that it's the term is the remaining unexpired term of this, which happens, you know, it's the full 2 years at this point. There's not an election in between. I can answer any questions regarding that, but there is concurrence between the town attorney and the Secretary of State's office that this is the procedure. People may be reflecting on other times that we've had vacancy in elected positions. That is always spelled out in our charter. The Selectmen strictly references state statute. All the others are handled internally in our charter.
I have a comment, if I may,
Certainly.
or suggestion. It's pretty evident to me that if we vote on that tonight, we're gonna get a stalemate. We do have a special meeting coming up on the 19th. That'll give us, I suggest we hold off doing it till then, give us some time to, perhaps we can resolve the issue prior to coming up to the vote. I would hope we can. And then vote that day. That's my suggestion. If
You can make a motion to postpone till that meeting.
I'll so move.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to postpone any appointment of a replacement for Liz Kruger to our special meeting on December 19th at 7 o'clock at Town Hall.
Or we're posted.
Or where
or
posted, yes,
the
thank
place
you,
to be
or where
designated.
posted, thank you.
Okay. I did have, I'll reserve my comments for that day. I do have, that's one of my
That's not a
comments.
fire, it's just the phone.
It's an alarm for me to take my pill.
Okay. Forward fire chief. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will consider the appointment on December 19th. And Joyce, will you make sure those two items are on
Yes.
our agenda? Okay, that completes.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Would, you wanna put on the, I'm sorry, but did you wanna put on the deputy selectman that night too? Would that make sense to do both of them?
Certainly.
You can wait until the
Or we can wait till the
Wait
next,
till
oh, that's right,
January.
just 2 weeks, a week later, why not?
Yeah, it's 2 weeks
It's
later.
2 weeks, that's fine. We'll wait.
I'm willing to put it on the agenda if
Nah, I
you
don't care.
are interested.
No, that's.
Okay,
I was just trying to put everything together, we can wait.
makes sense. Okay, anything else to come before this board this evening?
You're in the seat. That's the
That's-
motion.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All those in
In
favor?
Morris's absence, I'll make
Aye.
the motion.
Aye, thank you all for